On July 21st, the U.S. House of Representatives voted to bar federal employees from downloading TikTok on government-issued devices. This came after White House advisor Peter Navarro's claim that Chinese social media apps like TikTok and WeChat are used for stealing personal data and intellectual property, surveillance and tracking, or engaging in disinformation campaigns. Now does this look like what Navarro described? So why would the US fear them? WeChat and TikTok are indeed popular. Each month, 1.2 billion users are active on WeChat. TikTok has been downloaded for more than 2 billion times worldwide. International social media platforms used to be US's go-to weapon in spreading political ideology, stirring up revolution, or causing regime changes in countries it doesn't agree with. Suddenly, the US is frightened that WeChat and TikTok might be used for the same purpose, perhaps even against them.
This sort of thing is kind of scary to the United States, a development like this in which a Chinese or originated company does so well, because the U.S. has been on top for so long in terms of the global economy, in terms of its idea of exporting the idea of democracy and so on. So I think the country has to get used to sharing the stage with other people, both politically and economically, and I think that's the larger issue going on here.
But technology is neutral. Its good and evil depend on the user's intentions. And for those of us who use these apps every day, we use them for work, for relaxation, for connecting with families, or for sharing our lives with our acquaintances. We don't use it for creating chaos in other countries, the very idea of them presenting national security threat. It's ludicrous. But national security indeed has become the jack-of-all-trades excuse to justify sanctioning anything US politicians want to oppose. And the problem is that anything China-related has automatically become the devil under the current US political climate. Consider this. How many US policymakers have actually used WeChat or TikTok? How many of them have heard about these apps before hearing they pose a threat to the US? How many have spent the time to talk to ByteDance or Tencent before declaring their products dangerous? How many of them have talked to people who use them on a daily basis? How many of them have truly understood how these apps work both in China and around the world? Have any of them ever bothered to ask these questions? I bet the answer will be disappointing. In a recent interview with CGTN about the escalating tension between China and the US, former US Ambassador to China Max Baucus pointed out that American officials in particular, lack understanding of China.
Part of the problem, too, is not very many Americans have been to China. Americans really don't understand China. I wonder how much time Secretary of State Pompeo was personally spent in China other than his official capacity. U.S. officials do not know China very well. Too few members of Congress, too few members of the United States government have been to China.
Then again, why should they? American politicians are already locked in the self-perpetuating cycle of misunderstanding and prejudice. The longer they stay ignorant towards China, the harsher they treat it. And the harsher they treat it, the less likely they get to know it. And given how slow the US government has reacted to the recent crisis, and how election-driven their politicians are, I won't be holding out much hope for them to take the first step towards reconciliation. Because for people who don't bother getting to know the subject at hand, it is simply too much to ask.